and when rapid speed down to 2,500. That's your language.
Yep, flight 4ME, reduce speed to 180.
BlackBox.
Okay, hey, welcome to the show. Kenny Porter here. Thanks for tuning in again to KP's Black Box. And as promised, I have one of my good friends and Marine fraternity brothers. You know, he went to different college, but you know this Marine thing.
Same school, just different part of the school.
Yeah, right. So Luke Jacobs, fighter pilot, Harriers. From what years to what years? Remind us again.
I was in our beloved Corps from 2000 to 2020.
So 20 years of war, and you're right in the middle of it.
Right, dead center of it, other
Wow.
than the first year and a couple months.
So the reason we got you back here today is we had talked about in the previous podcast. You know, we had a lot of fun, and we try to keep it to an hour. Well, the hour went by so fast because we were just kind of in here goofing off.
Yeah.
That we didn't really get to talk about some of your sorties or missions or, you know.
Yeah.
And we talked about that, like what you would call a sortie and what you would call a mission.
Yeah.
And really defining that. So let's just start it with that.
Okay, well, last time you yelled at me because we didn't do the cheers first, so I've been waiting for the cheers.
Oh God! I look down. I go, oh crap! We didn't do everything. So thanks for reminding.
Yeah.
There you go, sir. The
cheers.
Lieutenant Colonel,
Semper
keeping
Fi.
me on task here.
Semper Fi. You think I came back to talk, but I really came back for this.
Yeah, you're like, hey, Staff Sergeant, get your toast in. So this is a toast to our beloved Corps and also our other men and women in uniform with the other inferior branches.
Our sister services.
Our sister services, yes. Thank you. All of you are important, even the puddle jumpers.
It's a team effort. It's
Noah
a team
Fisher.
effort. So
Puddle jumper. You've met my son, right?
yes,
The puddle jumper.
Yeah, puddle jumper.
Yeah, I like teasing him.
Yeah, people who jump out of perfectly good airplanes.
And then my
still.
Army son, who's not ready to be a Marine yet, or ain't ready to be a Marine yet.
Yeah. Well, everyone's got a purpose.
And then we're crayon eaters, according to. So cheers to you all. Yeah. Johnny Walker, thank you. One day you will actually pay for that for us. You'll send us bottles, hopefully. But until then, I'm spending money on
Good stuff.
good toast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for folks out there who don't really understand kind of some of the language and nomenclature, what is the difference between a sortie and a mission?
Well, really, they're
from an airman's point of view.
From a pilot's perspective, if I tell you a sortie, hey, I'm going to go fly a sortie today. Generally speaking, that's accepted. The accepted definition on that is a takeoff and a landing.
Okay.
And it could be a combat sortie. It could be a training sortie. But usually we reserve the word mission for a combat sortie.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of like bourbon and whiskey. Not all whiskeys are bourbons, but not all bourbons are whiskeys. Kind of.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Check.
So if I say, hey, I'm gonna go do this sortie today, I'm basically implying it's gonna be a training sortie.
Okay.
Training event.
All right.
It just sounds sophisticated. Now I can do a long sortie. So a sortie is a takeoff and a landing, but I can fly for 5 hours.
Okay.
Or sometimes you'll do multiple takeoff and landings, and that would be multiple sorties. It's basically how we kind of move the beans around and count your events. So when you grow up and become an airline guy, or you're trying to quantify how much you've done, you can break down a sortie. And then specifically for a Harrier, a sortie technically is 1.3 hours of flight time.
Okay.
So
next question for you then, as a pilot, and now you fly commercially and move stuff around. We won't talk about your current employer, but when you were a fighter pilot,
attack pilot.
attack pilot. Now, what the hell's the difference?
Well, fighter guys make movies and attack pilots win wars. Right? And that's a quote from
See, even as a Marine, I didn't know that. Attack pilot.
Yeah, attack pilot. So, two distinct things that we do. Fighter guys, very important because they establish air supremacy and air superiority. So guys like me could do and keep our heads down on the ground and support the customer. Which is the grunt on the ground.
Yeah,
so
jarheads like me.
Yeah, so Hornet guys, they say they're swing fighters, meaning they can do fighting and attack.
Swing fighters.
Yeah, they're swingers.
Yeah.
Harrier can do fighter stuff. Like we can do air-to-air stuff. In fact, we were really good at it in the Falkland Wars. The British really used the Harrier to make a very distinct point. But in 2020, we're attack guys. Like, we can do fighter stuff, but we specialize and we're really good at close air support. That's like our bread and butter. And then armed reconnaissance, where we go out and find something to shoot and kill. But close air support, where guys on the ground, they need help, customer service, we provide it.
So you brought us some some video today that's sorry, that's declassified.
Yes.
And everybody can see it and put their eyes on it and brag about all your cool flying. So that's really cool. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Which was what we were going to try to get into last time. And we just completely
we
ran
were
out
like
of time.
two squirrels just all over the place.
Which, by the way, the timer's not running in, so I don't even know how much time we have left. He's back there looking at video.
I know. He's like, man, this video is awesome.
So cool. So here's we'll get right into it. Here's one of the first ones that Ian's pulling up on the screen for us, which you guys should be able to see who's watching the video podcast. If you're listening, hey, get in front of a computer because this is worth looking at.
Yeah, so this is this right here is a video taken out of Yuma, Arizona, just north of Yuma, which you are seeing right there in the top right of this screen is the Colorado River, all the farmland, and then west of that is the desolate desert of California and Arizona.
So, which cowboys and Indians were you fighting in Yuma here? When
I think, if my recollection is correct, we were fighting what we like to call the Snowbirdians. They invade from north to south from Canada, and they invade Yuma. So our typical enemy was the Snowbirdians.
the Blue Hairs?
Yeah, blue hairs.
Yeah.
But
we love you guys, though.
they would double the population of Yuma in like a weekend every winter.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it was interesting living in Yuma. Side note, very interesting because it was a very tight military community, very tight farming community, and then in the winter, and no kidding, like it would almost double in size of winter visitors.
Wow.
And they would show up like overnight. It was the most like
Ian,
bizarre thing.
If you can, put that that other video back up that we were just watching, because what I thought I saw was runway. Was that airport or the airfield?
If I remember correctly, where were we on that one? Man, my age is getting to me. That's my hand.
Oh. Yeah, and sorry about the dead silence, folks. If you're listening, because it's really boring.
We're two dudes staring at a screen, which is like oh yeah. So this is the video. This is Yuma right here. So I'm coming back from a training sortie, more than likely.
Okay.
Actually, I think this might have been my last flight. But yeah, so this is me coming in to land. There's Yuma. The base is to the left. This is runway.
Flying over a highway there.
Yep, that's the main drag in Yuma, and then this is runway 21 left, and coming in for a nice slow.
Runway 21 left, clear for landing.
Yep, and this is just a nice slow landing that the Harriers famous for. We can land at about 60 miles an hour and precision landing. So I'm actually aiming for the dead center between the two, the intersection between the two runways, which I hit.
All the tire marks there.
Yeah, all the grease marks.
Grease marks. Yeah.
And I don't remember leaving this on. I probably forgot to turn it off. But yeah, this is just a standard day, hot.
Yeah.
I remember, you can tell it's the summer because it is sunny, not a wisp of clouds in the sky.
So you made it lieutenant colonel. You did 21 years?
I did 21 years, yeah.
21 years. Of 21 years, 24 hours in a day, how many of those 21 years do you think hour-wise was in the cockpit of?
Well, so I can tell you, I have just over 2,000 hours of mishap-free time in the Harrier.
Of mishap-free time.
Mishap-free. I like to
if you add your mishaps.
I have no mishaps. I brought every time the airplane tried to get put itself in the ground, I brought her back.
Nice.
Fairly lucky though. I have a lot of friends that got a lot of time, but they have mishaps, and it's just the way it works out. But yeah, I was just over 2,000 hours of Harrier time. Total time in the military was 23 and some change.
Wow.
So, go back to missions and sorties and stuff. A lot of people don't understand, like, yeah, the Harrier can fly for an hour, but it's not just like we just don't jump in the jet and go fly for an hour and then bring her back. It's about 4 hours of planning, a 2-hour brief, a 1-hour sortie, maybe an hour and a half if you stretch the gas, and then a 2-hour debrief. So that's an 8-hour day.
Wow.
So sometimes the amount of time that you spend on the ground preparing and debriefing the sortie is exponentially longer than I have sorties that were 0.8, so 3/4 of an hour, 45 minutes long, because we'd go fight, burn a bunch of gas, and have to race home before we ran out of gas. So you would spend all this time briefing and debriefing, but you'd only get like an hour of flight time.
So general rule of thumb, when you flyboys say run out of gas, how much reserve is left in your tank?
We were required by our higher headquarters to have 1,200 pounds of fuel, a beam, our intended landing spot, and that was the enough gas to do a come in for a touch and go or wave off and then come in for 1 or 2 more landings. So
Not a lot of fuel.
no, but there was enough runways that you could wave off and land on a different runway or do something else. You had to be on deck with 800 pounds of gas, which you don't want to be messing around with 800 pounds of gas. That's only we would burn about 200 pounds a minute, so it's only about 4 or 5 minutes of fuel.
So I have like 43 hours in an airframe.
It's pretty good.
Cessna.
Yeah.
So one of the things I learned flying with a good buddy of mine who was a Rio guy, a backseat guy, but then
Transition,
and now he flies for UPS as a 777 pilot. But he was my instructor for a while.
Yeah,
out
we
at
talked about it. Yeah.
Horizon. But one of the things that just that's counterintuitive to what you would think as a land walker, said if something's going on and I'm floating in the air, I want to get to the ground as quickly as possible. And you go, well, wouldn't that just be the point A to point B? Straight line, let's just get there. It's not. And so we were flying one day, and he was showing me some things. We were doing kind of an off the books cross country, and because he's rated and has extra licenses and can do things that I can't do in the cockpit, we ended up flying through some clouds and flying through as we were going to Kentucky. We got into a little cold weather, and the plane started icing.
Oh no! Oh,
stressful. Stressful, yeah. And I have pictures of it. I'll have to, maybe I can give them to Ian. He can put them up, and I can show you some of these pictures. But what ended up happening, he says, well, if this keeps up, we're going to need to get the plane on the ground. And he says, but here's a lesson for you. Right now, what do you think we should do? I'm like, well, we should probably give up some altitude and get as close to the ground as possible. He goes, it's colder at this lower elevation. We're actually going to do the opposite of that.
We're going to climb.
We're going to climb. I'm like, wait a minute. We got ice on our brakes over here, and I'm seeing ice forming on the front of the plane. And now I see one of our pistons is getting hot, so there must be some ice on the intake.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he says, yeah, you got all those things right, but we're going to climb. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right to me.
It's funny. I had this very conversation on my last trip in December. I was talking to the captain, and we were talking about scenarios very much like this. And a lot of times in aviation, the obvious answer is not the right answer.
Yeah.
So in icing, you either got to get below it, which sometimes that won't work. Maybe there's mountains, or maybe the weather's even worse. So what he was thinking was, we might be able to get underneath it, but now I could hit an object, or I'll be too close to the ground, or radar can't see me, or you need to climb above it. And a lot of times, once you climb above it and climb out of the icing conditions, because the icing conditions only really exist in certain bands, right? But maybe your plane can't climb out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not a definite yes, let's climb. It's, can we climb?
Yeah.
Can we get out of it? Or no, maybe we turn around. Maybe the other obvious answer is maybe we turn around.
So his experience, which proved to be right, below, and he was looking at weather reports and saying, hey, it's icier and it's colder below than we are at this altitude. And so we were at like 6,000. We went to 9,000 feet.
And climbed right out of it. And it got
climbed
warmer.
out, and it got warm, and a big chunk of ice actually flew off the plane.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched the cooling in this one piston go down. And then the other thing that happened was he said, hey, Kenny, here's what you need to think about. When you're at 9,000 feet versus 6,000 feet, you've got more time, and you've got a greater glide slope.
Oh, yeah.
To look around and figure out where you can put the plane down as safely as possible.
He bought time.
He bought his time.
He traded altitude for time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was explaining this to my son. We were playing chess, and I said, flying's a lot like chess. There's not just one right move. I mean, chess is a series of moves where you're trying to get to a point. In aviation, he climbed and traded altitude for time. Sometimes you trade altitude for airspeed. Sometimes you trade speed for altitude. Sometimes you'll trade. So it's all about, trying to make a series of decisions based off of the information you have at hand, and then going into that little trick bag of yours, going, well, I've been here before, I've seen similar situations like this, and going, well, I know I can do this, or I know this is how it worked out last time. But the problem is that's also a trap, because then you can be like, well, it happened, A, B, and C happened last time, so I'm going to go right to E, when maybe D's not exactly the same, or the situation's a little bit different. In fact, we had an interesting situation. I was XO the squadron. I was taking out one of my buddies for his division lead. He's going to learn how to fly with 4 guys on his wing. And so we're out, we're doing our stuff, and we're over, actually, right there, that's the Salton Sea underneath the aircraft there.
Okay.
And that's in California, right? And so to the west of that is the mountain range, and then San Diego, right? So we're out there.
Go ahead and play that one, Ian.
While that's playing, this wasn't that sortie, but it was a great lesson, because I used my experience. But it didn't work out perfectly, but it was very, very close. So we were out there, we're doing our stuff, and I keep looking to the west, and I can see a dust storm starting to form right off the base of the mountains, because west of the El Centro, no, the other one, man. Come on, you're like us last time. You're like click, 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 click. So you can kind of see it. So that's Salton Sea.
You can fly your plane in reverse in the air too.
Oh yeah, man. So what I'm looking at, and so I keep dialing up the ATIS in Yuma, in El Centro, actually, because we're right over top of El Centro.
ATIS, can you tell everybody?
That's automatic something weather. Basically, it's a robotic voice.
It's an acronym for a weather machine.
I should know that. That's very bad on me. So it's basically it's kind of like dialing a friend, where you can call up the weather in El Centro, and it's giving you updated real time. No kidding, this is the weather. And so we're hearing the barometric pressure go from 2992 to 2990, and it's dropping, and then it starts dropping really quickly.
Automatic Terminal Information Service.
Yeah, I should know that. Good check though.
Yeah, I was remembering that. That was my. Whatever.
So I was like, hey man, what do you want to do? And he was like, well, I think we can make it back to Yuma. I said, well, the barometric pressure is dropping really quickly. That should tell us something. And then look to the west, and we turned, and we were facing south, and we look out the right window, and now you can see a full shamal. I mean, it is dust storm, and it's moving fast. And we were supposed to land in Yuma, get hot gas, which means the airplanes keep running. We can pull up basically to a gas station. The Marines come running out. We don't shut our engines down. We can get gas while the engine's running. It's all super safe. They ground the jet, and then we're going to go on a cross country and go to Phoenix. I said, hey man, I think we really need to think about heading to Phoenix right now, because we have the gas to get to Phoenix. But if we wait more than 5 more minutes, we're going to have to go to Yuma, and I think we're going to get stuck there. And I was like, but it's your sortie, it's your experience. I'm just giving you an input. And he was like, okay, let's do it. It really wasn't much of a choice. I mean, it was a fairly obvious answer, right? And so we start flowing to Phoenix. We call base and say, hey, we're not going to get gas. Tell the Marines we're good, and heads up for a shamal. By the time we land in Phoenix, which was about a 30-minute leg, the weather in Yuma had gone to basically 0-0, blowing dust. We would have never made it out of Yuma.
Wow.
And so we're sitting in the hotel bar afterwards, kind of talking. I said, hey, man, look, this was a good experience, because it wasn't forecasted. I was like, but when you're an old man, you have to start turning your head. And I saw the wisps of dirt moving, and then I started listening to ATIS, and I started doing, A to B to C, and here we are. The pressure started dropping, and what happened? He was like, no, that was really good. And he's like, I had seen this before, but he's like, I never tied it all together. So it's all about just trying to use your experiences and looking around and having high situational awareness. But at the end of the day, I was like, look, you have 3 guys on your wing, and you may not have 3 dudes that know what's going on. You might have 3 new dudes that are just like picking their nose. Yeah. Just trying to stay inside of you and do the right tactics while you're like outside trying to do the right tactics, make sure that, Ding Dong is doing the right thing and that he's on your wing. And the next thing you know, man, we don't got the gas to go.
How long before you're in the cockpit, literally pulling back on a joystick of a trainer, or I don't know what you train you in?
Yeah, T-34.
T-34, that's right.
Turbo Mentor.
So from the time that you check into aviation school or training, how many weeks or days are you there before they actually give you your first flight?
So we did.
Hey,
see
what
great.
This feels like.
Yeah, so joined the Marine Corps, went to infantry school for 6 months. Then I went to flight school in Pensacola. I was in ground school for about in between this thing called API, it's Aeronautical Prep Indoctrination. That was a month, and then we went to ground school for the aircraft for like another 2 weeks, and then we did about a month or so of simulators, and then you get to fly. So 4 months.
That's great. I mean,
Yeah, if you
flying
think about
a
it.
multi-million-dollar machine.
Well, T-34 was simple, but
still $1 million.
But you think about it, I distinctly remember my first flight like it was yesterday. I mean, it was just like, because everything's happening so fast, and it's the military, right? So it's you got to keep up. And then next thing I know, like, hey, you got your sim done. Next day, I went flying, and I'm at home and I'm like trying to study, but I couldn't sleep. And then I woke up and I was super excited. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm flying. I'm like, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And it's the first time you put all this heavy gear on and the helmet, and my head's burning because it's like I didn't break the helmet in like I was supposed to, and like, oh yeah, I was, in the first sortie, the guy was just like, you're gonna be a mess. You're gonna be like 20 minutes behind the airplane, and I totally was for sure. Everyone is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that sortie very distinctly because we took off.
And it probably felt like a mission, right? The war was staying alive.
The war was not getting yelled at and failing, because every day in flight school is a final exam. Because it's either you pass, or if you don't, you fail, and you only get so many failures. See ya.
Yeah.
And a whole life's worth of work is down the drain, right? So the pressure is on you. And then when you're in primary, which is where Pensacola's primary flight school for everybody, except for there's guys that go to Corpus, but the T-34 is your primary aircraft. But the goal for me was pointy nose airplanes. Like I wanted to be a Hornet guy, is what I wanted to fly. And so not only is the pressure to pass or fail, but now it's to pass with high grades, right? So that you can make the number one in your class, so you can get to where you wanted to go, and so on. So every day is like the most important day of your life, and like not figuratively, like no kidding. You put so much pressure on yourself. It's almost hard to look back and realize how much pressure I put on myself. And then the instructors were like nitpicking you, and then I'd go home and just like stress out about it, and then I would get better. But it was a really intense 6 months of my life.
So Ian's got some other video up here prep for us. So this appears to be one of your combat missions that you were able to record and get released, right? So tee this one up for us.
Yeah, so this was, hey, pause it real quick. This was the winner of 2006, Iraq, overhead Ramadi. It was a rough, this was just as the Sunni awakening was happening.
Okay.
Right? And so we were over, I flew nights for almost 7 months. So this was probably about 2:00 in the morning.
Wow.
There's a clock
and this
on
is still, maybe not first generation, but second generation.
This is second gen. Yeah, this is second gen Lightning Pod video. Pretty good. So it's at nighttime. This is forward looking infrared. So it's pretty good. I checked on station, and I checked it into an Army section. So we had Engelco Marines. Their call sign was Wild Eagle. I checked in with Wild Eagle, and he was like, "Hey man, we had a rough day. We lost a couple soldiers today, snipers. So we're looking to find these guys." And so basically my job most of the time was to take this camera and look for people doing nefarious things after midnight, because there was a curfew, right? So if you're out walking the streets after midnight, like that was like step one of ROE, rules of engagement, because you're not supposed to be walking around. But if you might have a reason to be walking around. So I ended up finding this guy, and he was digging a hole in the middle of the intersection, which is like, what are you doing?
IED planter.
He wasn't like planting a flower, right?
Right.
So we started working the ROE. It took us a long time, which is good, because the Engelco guys on the ground.
And ROE, for listeners who don't know, rules
of engagement. So we had a specific.
You're just not in a cowboy town where you can go.
This isn't capital W war, right? Like we're in the middle of a city with a bunch of people sleeping. So we had very specific things we had to meet in order to engage the enemy. So the guys on the ground, that's their job, is to take this video, and they're seeing this like we are, like on their screen, and they're seeing it, and we're talking over the radio, and we're having a really good conversation. And as we're talking, and as the situation developed, they're just basically saying, "Yep, okay, he's after curfew. Yep, he's digging a hole in the ground. Yep, this is a known bad guy area. Like, yep, here we go." And then we start working up what's called a 9-line, which is the how we pass coordinates and elevations and the targeting, and we get everyone on the same page. We get that, and they give it to me. I read it back to them. I make sure it's in my aircraft. Everything's kosher, and now we're just waiting for approval from higher. And that took about 5 minutes, and then a voice came over on the radio and said that mission's approved. Call in with heading. And so I had to flow to the south, point my nose to the north. I had a very narrow corridor to make sure that the bomb didn't. If it does fall, it doesn't fall on friendlies. And what people don't understand about combat, everyone just thinks we're just out there just shooting, right? And just let the bullets and the bombs fall where they may. Yeah. No, the guys on the ground are such professionals that they really take every life into account. And then so did I. Like I would make sure that hey, does this meet the ROE? Hey guys, like I want to make sure that we're all good. Like I want this to be a good kill, because if it's not, ends up on New York Times and we lost. Yeah. So all the guys. And
you got to walk around with that for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Did I?
Yeah. Did I or did I not do the right thing? Yeah. And I always tried to be the calming voice in it. Be like, all right, man. Like let's talk this through. Like I want to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing, because sometimes and they were amped up. Like they were looking for a fight.
So I talked about this yesterday in optics.
Yeah.
So this was your optics back then. This is the visual that you were getting, the information that you were getting. It's in a moment, high intensity. You're flying at 500 knots or whatever your airspeed you were at there. And that's a lot of information to take in and keep that plane in the air.
And keep your emotions at bay. I think the hardest part is to not get wrapped up in the, hey man, like I want to take the fight to the enemy, because I do. Yeah. Like, that's why I joined.
Right.
So this was a good sortie. Ended up dropping a 500-pound GPS aided mission.
Ian played this?
Yeah. So this is after release, post release, weapons off, and you'll see it come in from top to bottom.
So, all right, hold on, Ian. All right, pause it. If you can, recreate for me, so we don't have any audio.
Yeah.
So if you can recreate for me, maybe if you can play two characters.
Oh, I can.
Who's talking to you?
Yeah.
And what you're saying back.
All right.
So ready?
Well, so hold on. Don't hit play yet, because like I said, this is all post release. So there's really actually no talking after post release. So basically, it would be Wild Eagle. This is Torment 1-1 checking in on station. Hey, I'm single Harrier with 2x GBU 38s with the hour playtime. That's how I always say it. And Wild Eagle would come back like, hey, roger that, good morning. Torment, here's the mission. Here's the laydown. Here's the friendlies. Here's what I would like you to do. So like I said before, my job was to basically just kind of watch. And then we, in just a normal conversation like this, he's watching what I'm seeing. We're talking back and forth. And then he would say, and then finally I said, hey, this guy's digging a hole in the ground. Confirm ROE. And that's when like notch come up. Like you're like, ooh, this is getting serious. And while he goes like, yep, I'm seeing it. Stand by 9 line. And
so the person that's talking to you, is that like an intel guy?
No, it's actually a JTAC, a Joint Terminal Air Controller, or FAC. He's actually a FAC because he was an aviator. Yeah. A small difference in the Marine Corps. So he was a FAC, and I actually knew the guy from a previous deployment. So we already had like the rapport. Like I knew his voice.
Which is important.
Which is huge, which is why the Marine Corps is so good at close air support. Because we're bros. And when I check in, guys know my voice, I know their voice, and we already have a common bond. A, we're Marines. 2, we probably know each other more than likely.
So, and for those of you who don't know, Marine Corps is one of the smallest units other than the Coast Guard.
It is. And then take Marine Aviation and make a smaller subset of a small.
We're talking 90-some thousand folks right now in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, just about.
And aviation makes up maybe few thousand
of it, right? And then
wow, okay.
And then here we go. But yeah, so he would just say, "Hey man, stand by 9 line." So 1, 2, and 3 not applicable because that was like heading and stuff for old school stuff. And then it was elevation was 161 feet.
What?
Yeah, so you see the H top
I see the
right
161.
So 161. And then he would length 4, and then 5 was description. So it was building because what happened?
Are the numbers above that your lat long?
Yep,
stuff?
that was a lat long. Okay. And then so you see that intersection that's dead center to the left. The guy was actually in that middle of that intersection, and you can kind of see a little hot spot right where he's pointing. Yeah. That's where he was digging. And so what happened was he was digging right there.
Is he right there at the corner of that building?
No, he's actually in just about where the crosshairs are. So what happened was we were going to kill him in the middle of the street. and he did his whatever he was up to, and then
He could
mo-
probably hear your engines, right?
Well, so I was at about 20,000 feet and about 3 miles away, so he couldn't hear me. That's where I purposely was hanging out up there.
Oh, wait a minute. You got to back me up now. You're
3 mile,
161.
yeah. So that is the height of the target.
Oh,
That's the height of the target.
Got you. I thought you were plane. I was like, dude, you're at
No,
161.
no, no. So I was about 18 to 20,000 feet. I was in the stack, the cast stack.
Maybe he's hearing you.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of other noises, so he
Right.
probably didn't hear us. I was lights out. Definitely couldn't see me. He had no idea I was watching him.
Yeah.
So he's in the street doing his deed. We were going to try to kill him in the intersection, but it took too long to satisfy the ROE, which is good. Then he moved to that building, and so we were watching him. And so now that ROE was not solved because now he's in a building, and now we're
Right.
trying to figure out like, hey, can
Who's
we
in there? What
yeah,
could
who,
it be?
how many, what other things do we have to solve? And they brought in another sensor from another thing that said, no, that's an enemy building. We know it's an enemy building. We have confirmed information on that. And we see him. He's actually, what you can't see is there's an eave, and he was smoking a cigarette. Yeah, and so
Lit
the
himself
other
up, huh?
sensor
Yeah.
could see him. And so I said, okay, hey, man, so then here we go.
Yeah.
And so we went back. So we raid. So
Even when I was in the Marine Corps as a young infantry Marine, we would do, we like to operate under the shade of darkness,
Yes.
right? So a lot of those missions are early morning, late night, or practice runs. But we had a great platoon sergeant who actually was a Vietnam guy. He was salt. I mean, he was old salt. And this is in the 90s, right?
oh, yeah,
Early
yeah.
90s.
So he's
About to leave. He had got busted back. I don't want to say his name, but a Marine's Marine, but he was like a chesty puller Marine.
yeah. And the Marine Corps had moved.
page 11s,
Yeah.
which were, if you didn't have a page 11 his
Back
time,
in that day, yeah, you weren't really
trying
a Marine.
hard
yeah.
enough. All right. So this guy said, look, I want to just show you some really simple things because dudes are out there smoking. And he goes, I want you to walk direct 200 yards that way.
Yep.
Young Marine walks out and he's smoking his cig now, and he's got a Prick 77, his radio, been with him. And he goes, walk out there, and it's the dead of darkness. And he goes, I'm going to tell you when to stop. So it's a couple hundred yards. He goes, all right, light that effing cigarette. Hits the lighter. He goes off like a big glow.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
And then he says, all right, and all the young Marines were standing around. He goes, you saw that, right? You know where your enemy's at. And he says, okay, now take a draw off that cigarette. So the young Marine's like, and he lit his face up.
Oh, yeah. That cherry is amazing how much energy it puts out.
It blew me away. And I was like, oh, that's why you don't smoke at night. It's not because they're assholes and they don't want you to
just smoke.
Yeah.
It's they're trying to save your life.
Save your life.
Yeah. So infantry school, the basic school where all officers go,
Yeah.
they did the same demo for us. And I didn't believe it until I saw it.
It's
And then you see
crazy,
it,
isn't
and
it?
you're like 100, 200 yards away. You can't see the guy
You light yourself up like a freaking
until he
flashlight.
puts it and draws, and that cherry goes red, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's the target.
Yeah,
So-
he did the old Zippo lighter, and that was
that's
crazy.
huge. Yeah, which makes sense. But the cherry is what really
Yeah.
surprised me because you think
Just
about
a little cigarette.
little tiny like fire.
Yeah.
It's not even a fire, right? It's just
Yeah.
a smoldering.
So any optics on that, like when you were about to drop, could you see?
I
guy?
couldn't see it because the screen in the jet is not high def. It was
Gotcha.
it's an old CRT tube, so I couldn't see it. So there was another sensor with another guy that said, "Hey, yep, that's the target."
He's having a Pall Mall.
Yep. And so we read then. So line 6 is the 10-digit grid, which we don't have on this screen. So
Okay.
they convert it into a 10-digit grid. I read it. I make sure I type it in. I read it from my system. He says, "Yep, that's good." Gives me my final attack heading. Hey, your final attack heading is 360, which means basically he very specific. He needs
Yeah.
me to be on this heading. Sometimes you get a big cone, sometimes you don't get anything.
Mhm.
This time it was very tight because there was a lot of aircraft. There was a bunch of stuff going on, so I had a very narrow corridor I had to run. And then he gave me a time on target and said, so a time on target is not when you release; it's when the weapon goes bang.
Wow.
And we like to be within plus or minus 10 seconds of that, right? Not really plus, but you can
Yeah.
be 10 seconds late, but don't be early.
So this is not a laser guided bomb. This is
No, it was a GPS. It was a JDAM. It was GPS guided.
Yeah.
So I actually devised the coordinates off of my system, gave it to him, then he read it to me, and then I read it to him. It's kind of complicated.
Right.
A lot of talking.
So should we play this now?
Yeah, so this is now, so I called in with heading. He gave me a cleared hot, so don't drop without a cleared hot. I got my cleared hot. I dropped. And this is the last 10 seconds
You're
of
like, okay. What's going through your mind right now?
pause it. So this was my first release in combat.
Keep playing that, like, run that again while he's talking. Go ahead. I'm
So
sorry.
it was my first release in combat. So I was nervous. I was scared. I was excited. Probably had like 1,000 emotions going through me. But I think the big piece was, am I doing the right thing?
Wow.
Is this a righteous, kill? And then after it went boom, I had delayed the fuse purposely to get inside the house to minimize the effects on the other buildings. And then what the video does a poor job showing because it gets cut off for whatever reason, because of poor editing probably by me. There's this big smoking hole on the ground, and I look at it, and it was just the weirdest feeling ever, because you talk about it in training, you train to this thing, and then the guy's like, all right, that was a good kill. And then they end up sending guys, because at the time in 2007, you had to do a boots on ground and essentially investigation, make sure, who'd you kill, and did you kill any women and children and all that stuff. So the next morning, they went there to the building. It was him and another dude, and the guy that we had saw was like number one target for the battalion.
Wow.
So, and he had killed a lot of friendlies, so it was good. But I couldn't sleep that night because I was like so amped up and like did everything. Was that the right guy? Was it the building? And it was just like this hard to describe like pot of emotions, you know. And then you feel good because you're like, At that time, I'd been in the Marine Corps 7 years, so I had trained essentially elementary school through middle school to do that one thing that lasted a minute. And then luckily I had a bunch of other employments in combat, but it was good to kind of get that off your shoulder, which was good. But it was good to help my bros out.
So we're going to have some people out there who may be a little bit on the left.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, hey, you took the life of another human being.
I did.
And from a war point of view, I'm like, it was a just kill. It was a righteous kill, as we'd say as jarheads. But what do you say to people out there? And this is an environment now. We're in, 7-8 days into 2021. We got
hot mess of 2021.
Yeah, we thought 2020 was bad.
Yeah, seriously.
Hold on. People who it's really easy to stand on the periphery or outside of the optics.
Yeah.
And give you an assessment of what you shoulda, coulda, woulda done. Inside those optics, what would you say to people who may think that you're a bad dude for?
Well, so I'll tell them that, and like I told you earlier, like we go through a rigorous step-by-step process to make sure what we're doing is the right thing.
Yeah.
And I'm a religious man, and yeah, it sits on me.
Yeah.
We could talk about the several employments that I've made, but you got to remember, these people are not the people that you're going to invite over for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to have brunch with you. Our enemies are sworn, like literally sworn against what you and I, and even the far liberal, our friends in this country that are far liberal, the things that we hold dear, First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment, all of those things, they are sworn absolutely 100% against what we stand for. Yeah. So it doesn't bother me in the sense that I took the fight to the enemy. That guy, he and I been on a corner, and had it been a fair fight, which, by the way, the Marine Corps never fights fair, by the way. That guy would
have been in a fair fight?
Yeah, no fight is fair. That guy would never have blinked an eye to slit my throat. And I have seen videos of what they've done to Americans, and trust me, it doesn't bother me whatsoever.
Yeah. The piece I'd like to add to that too, and I know I have some people on the left who listen to my show because some of them are clients, and I've got some very liberal clients. And what I would like to point out that during this period that you were in is that your president during the last half of this was a very liberal president.
Yes.
He authorized more kills than Bush ever did.
Well, remember, I don't blame liberal or conservative because, quite frankly, we have enemies in this world that do not like the United States, and it's not just in Iraq and Afghanistan. There are countries and people aligned to watch us burn.
Yeah, I talked about that yesterday too.
Yeah,
and I was just kind of doing a mind dump yesterday. I just needed to get it off my chest, and I was like, you know what, I want to record it.
Yeah.
And I, look, I don't like that people crash windows and that 4 people died at the Capitol.
It's
now
tragic.
a Capitol officer dies.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
That was tragic. And for the BLMers out there, I'm lowercase b, lowercase l, lowercase m.
Yeah.
It's tragic that there's a group of people who, minorities, who've had bad things happen to them. It's tragic. We have to be human beings to go, sometimes bad things happen to good people. And in this environment of what you just showed me, there was painstaking efforts to go through to verify, is this guy nefarious? Is he taking the lives of others? Is he acting in a capacity of war and waging war against us? So I would say those are just kills, but I want to take it back to something you just said 2 minutes ago. They hate us because they ain't us.
Well, they just don't. I don't understand.
And they is a big group of people out there in the world.
Yeah, there are people who are aligned against the very freedoms that the BLMers and the Antifa guys take advantage of.
Yeah.
And God bless America, because guess what?
Yeah.
That's what their rights are.
Right.
Could you imagine this country not allowing us to protest or do whatever yesterday or the day before was? That's what. I mean, I dedicated 20 years of my life, and people are like, oh, I can't believe you're okay with this. I'm like, hey, man, look, I swore an allegiance to the Constitution, not to a president.
Yeah, right.
And I love the Constitution, and I don't really care about the presidents, and I don't really care about the Congress. It's about the Constitution, and the Constitution gives you the right to do this very thing right here.
Right.
I read an article last week that a young, I think 12, don't quote me, 12, 13-year-old boy in Thailand was thrown in jail because he made a YouTube or a TikTok, I think it was a TikTok, making fun of the king. Think about that for a minute. 12-year-old boy. Probably really doesn't know much about anything.
Yeah.
Probably was a good joke if I spoke Thai.
Yeah.
And he made a funny video, which he thought he was being funny, and now he's rotting in a Thai prison, which I guarantee you is nothing like our maximum. It's worse than what the max that we have.
Yeah.
That is a great example of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
How many people just sit there and badmouth Trump or badmouth Obama?
When we can have comedians who can hold a bloody head of a figurehead of Trump. Yeah. And they can excuse it as it was just comedic relief.
And honestly, I'm okay with it. But because it's freedom of speech. I completely disagree with you. I think it's completely off base. And you kind of lost me on any argument therefore after. Yeah. But I put my buddies to rest for that very right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't have to agree with you. I think that's the big piece is I don't have to agree with you. Yeah. I disagree with you on a couple things. Yeah. Okay. Right. That's great. Actually, I love having people. I have some very liberal friends of mine that I disagree with them like wholeheartedly, but to go, hey man, we're adults. Yeah. Let's disagree, but let's agree on one thing. This is a great country. Yeah. We have done some terrible, awful things to many people. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we are able to complain and articulate our complaints to Congress and to the president and have a vote. Yeah. And it works. Yeah, and I would even go as far as saying if we go from our young country all the way back to the Roman Empire, good, bad, indifferent, the Romans had some things that they did pretty well, and coming up with a House and a Senate. Oh, brilliant. It was brilliant. And I take people back also, and I know we're talking about we're doing
but
what
this
we
is
do.
War,
Kenny,
right?
we do what we do here.
That's right. But I have to often remind some of my liberal friends that when we go back 4,000 years, slavery was not about color. No. Slavery was something that nations did to other nations they conquered. Yes. And indentured servants, there might even have been some people who were paid, but they were freaking slaves. And they weren't going anywhere because the old concept of indentured servitude, the British mastered that. Mastered indentured servitude. Jink showed me a soda. That's right.
Or War of 1812. That's a great one. My son was just studying War of 1812, and he asked me about indentured servitude. And what's the term when they were going aboard our ships and taking our sailors and making them their sailors? There's an actual term for it. I forget.
And you're gonna have to help us look that up.
Yeah, there's a term for it, but it's very much indentured servitude. I said, look, man, that's what makes America great.
Right.
We don't allow that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's happened in every corner of this planet that bad people
do bad things, and good people sometimes get caught up in bad situations. Young lady in the Capitol was killed because she was trying to protest. Yeah. And maybe it turned into a riot because she broke a window or because she was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time?
At the right time. This guy on the other side of the wall doing exactly what you did in that, and this is why I'm bringing this up now. What happened with that? I don't know if it was the Capitol police officer that shot her, but he had a rule of engagement.
Yeah, and she made the threshold.
Yeah. He had duty under these freaking laws that we have, good, bad, or indifferent. He was doing his duty. The day that you killed an enemy of the state, of our government, and we have a war waged, you did your duty and did it well, and I salute you. That gentleman or woman who squeezed off a round and took the life of another American citizen, as mad as some of my Trump friends are about that, I go, hold on. He had duty inside that rotunda, inside that Senate or House.
I think it was Senate, wasn't it?
I think it was the Senate. Yeah. That he had a duty to protect.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not he liked Pelosi's politics or Mitch McConnell's politics. His duty was defend the Constitution, defend the nation, and rules of engagement, deadly force was authorized. So
we can't be mad. I really have a hard time questioning when people are accepting and questioning when cops kill, in the line of fire. Now, the one thing in Minnesota where the dude was kneeling on that does not look good. But we got to be very careful about questioning the heat of the moment, pulling of a trigger. Yeah. We are trained. I'm not a cop. I got a really good friend of mine that's a deputy sheriff, and he's like, look, man, you pull that weapon, everything slows down. Yeah. And the taking a life of that close, I have a hard time questioning a police officer or the Capitol Police because they met thresholds, and we don't. I was thinking about this podcast today. Like, I don't know where we were going to go, but my roommate in Iraq, I think right before that employment. No, it was after that employment. He died. And like I was trying to tell my son and daughter. They asked me about this whole Capitol thing the other day, and I said, look, I go to war for my country, but I fight for my bro. Yeah. You don't fight for your country. Yeah. Your country puts you in a position where you now have to fight for each other to make sure that we can accomplish the mission and come home. Right. And when he did not come home, it was a very powerful moment for me because the reality of that moment and the reality of losing your roommate, the two dichotomies of war came to me in a very short span of time. Yeah. And trying to articulate that to people is hard because they only say like, oh, you're a fighter guy or you're a tech pilot. Like, you don't have these problems. Like, I fought my war at 20,000 feet. Yeah. But when you come back and your roommate is no longer with you because of a random rocket attack that got him, like that whole environment, it's so easy for us to sit here and watch CBS News or NBC or CNN and go, that's wrong. Afghanistan's wrong. Iraq, dude, we have no clue. The TV is not giving you the full picture, man.
And that's yesterday's conversation was, dealing with optics. And it's like God has put that word on my heart for the last 4 or 5 days. Yeah. Because I had a feeling that we were going to see a moment of unrest. And, sometimes there's good unrest. Yeah. And sometimes it's unnecessary. Yeah.
This would have been good had they not breached the building. Yeah. I'm all for unrest. Yeah. Exercise those rights. I tell people all the time, exercise them. You want to own a gun? Go exercise your Second Amendment right. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I have a few of them.
Yeah, I may have one or two. Yes. But I just don't understand how people think destruction of anyone's property is okay. Right. It's not.
Yeah.
You want to unrest? You want to make your point? Do it, not
Yeah.
at the cost of my nose. You know, like.
And that was my theory. And there's a lot of theories going around, but my theory was, I think people in the heat of the moment lost their shit. They didn't have a game plan. There was no brief beforehand.
Yeah.
There was no. The brief beforehand was, hey, the election was stolen, right? And let's pick on the president for a minute. He got people fired up.
He did. He drives me bonkers, man. Like, he was part of the problem, but he wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
We're reaping what we sowed this summer by allowing the protests to get violent. This hot mess, and I will disagree with you. I think that there were some agitators who had a very good plan, and they took advantage of a very emotional moment for people who 90% of those guys who were there probably just were like, I want to make a bunch of noise. Maybe, slide a couple, trash cans on fire and just make some noise.
I actually want to talk about that because we had some friends and family who protested up there with a group of Christians who were, and literally on the phone, we can hear them, we're talking to them, and they're actually singing praise and worship songs and hymns and praying for truth to be exposed.
Yeah.
That was their prayer, and that was their protest. Hey, we want to come up here so that somewhere, somehow, truth gets exposed. Now, I agree with you. I think there was some nefarious people who had a plan.
Oh, yeah. Professional agitators.
And hopefully at a later date when I can confirm some of the things that I was told, and hopefully we'll be able to see this, that there were buses led by a black SUV to, we're getting some audio in that, Ian, some feedback, who led and paraded some nefarious folks right up to the steps of the Capitol. Yeah. And that's where this thing kind of went off the rails.
Crazy.
But when I go back and I look at this and I think about the years that you served as a Marine attack pilot, and the young men who are serving now, fighter pilots, attack pilots, our SEALs, our Army dudes here, our coasties, our airmen, our sailors, what I am so proud of is that it's still a volunteer force.
100% volunteer.
Nobody's making them do it.
Nope.
And they are showing up and showing out, and I salute them. I'm proud of these guys and gals that are, maybe some of them are showing up because they don't feel like they have any other option in life, and they want to go do some government service so they get a guaranteed paycheck and some health insurance. Can't say that I blame you for that.
No, not today.
But there is still a large group of young men and women who feel a duty to country, and they want to go put their time in. And some of them do one contract and they leave. Some get halfway through their contract and go, oh, my God.
Poor choice.
Skipper, can you get me out of here? I think I'm insane.
Yeah, so, I actually had a Marine who, I was ex of the squadron, and I'll never forget this because he was a good kid. He was from deep, deep Alabama, deep. And I remember he was like, sir, I think I made a mistake. I was like, really? What? Why? He had gotten in trouble a couple times. We had to NJP him. Nothing crazy, just, stupid Marine tricks. And
that he just happened to get caught.
Oh, yeah. And even the CEO was like, look, man, he would show up to work, do a great job, and then on the weekends he was just a hot mess.
Yeah.
And he's like, sir, I just don't think I'm cut out to be a Marine. I said, look, remember a year ago when you put your hand up and you took that oath of office? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that, young man? He's like, yes. I said, okay, he's still here. He's still with us. You are just making poor choices on the weekends. But on Monday through Friday, super reliable kid, would do the job. A little poking and prodding here. But nothing unusual for a 19-year-old young man. I said, hey, man, look, the fastest way out of the Marine Corps is to finish your contract honorably.
That's great advice.
I was like, look, dude, you got 3 more years. Suck it up. Be a Marine. He was in logistics, which was probably the worst job in the Marine Corps.
He's an 04?
Yeah, he was an 04.
0431.
Yeah. And, really, I always tell him it was like being married. It's like a zero-sum game. Like your wife never tells you great job, but right. God forbid you screw up, and then she'll never let you live it down.
Phone calls from first sergeants and company gunnies all day long that you screwed up there.
Yeah, or the XO's like, why is there no toilet paper in the bathroom? Come on, man. I was like, look, dude, you're never going to get a compliment. It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
I was like, but when I know you're doing good jobs because I don't talk to you. Yeah. And about 4 months later, he came and said, hey, sir, I really appreciate it because I think, and I think it extends more than service members. You know, people who are cops, people who are deputy sheriffs, people who are teachers, someone who serves a community. They do it for the job because we need money and we need to, you know, put food on the table.
That's honorable. I mean,
It's honorable, but I think
family.
that the sense of duty to do something for your community at the cost of, you know, being a doctor or making a ton of money, I think those are the people that we really need to remember. Like, hey, if you're doing something for your community, your state, or your country, it's all the same.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome that this country has so many people, so many young people that are fired up about government, even though I might disagree with their politics.
Yeah.
I find it invigorating that people actually care.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just lose it in the noise.
Yeah.
You know?
And the only thing I would add to that, Jake,
Luke?
Luke Jacobs. Luke Jacobs. Jacob, my son.
You know how many people call me Jake? It has been.
And you're my friend. God, that's on camera, isn't it? Jake. You're Jake now. Let's have a cigar tonight.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would add to it is that before you spout off all these things about what you think about our country, please just take a little bit of time to go read some civics material again. Go read some history again. And I know there's going to be a bunch of people out there that goes, well, the history books lied to us. They didn't tell us how we treated the American Indians. They didn't tell us how we treated the slavery issue. I'm here to tell you, we all made a bunch of mistakes. Our ancestors made a bunch of mistakes. But I would say go fervently read the mistakes that was made. Read the reprint of history.
Read both sides of it.
Both sides.
Yeah.
And then go, oh, I have a chance now as a futurist to make a difference moving forward.
And I'll add to that, since we're adding stuff. Don't forget there's really only one perfect person.
Yeah.
We have a government made by men.
Right.
I know men, I know it's offensive, sorry. Men and women, right? We have a government formed by men, ran by men, humans. It's going to be mistake-ridden.
Right.
We got to be more patient. And this is truly what I try to tell my kids. You got to be patient. You got to understand that mistakes are going to be made. Is it a voluntary mistake or was it on purpose?
Yeah.
That's where I think you can start parsing out the mistake. But at the end of the day, we have a government formed by a bunch of dudes who were trying to do the right thing. 250 years later, I think we're doing pretty good, minus our major mistakes. We have a country that I don't see a lot of people running to Venezuela.
Right.
I don't see a lot of people running to China or Russia. I see people running to this country for all our mistakes because we're doing all right.
Yeah.
We can do better. And every day I try to do better as a citizen, but at the end of the day, I'm just a simple Marine. I'm going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, you know, preaching aside, I think this country could do a lot more with patience than throwing Model F cocktails.
Yeah. I agree with that. I heard a guy. Actually, I read a guy, and I can't give him the credit because I can't remember his name. It's part of being old. Jake. Luke. But the gentleman said, you know, if you were given 15 minutes to talk to the world, what would you say? And this guy, I thought it was beautiful. He said, I would probably take about 13 minutes to listen.
Oh, that's powerful.
And then hopefully in 2 minutes of what I heard, I can say back
what
to these
you
people
heard,
what I think I heard. And then maybe from there, we have understanding. And that's the beauty about aviation. I want to try to bring it back to that.
Yeah.
I know we got a couple more things I want to show here on the screen.
Yeah.
But in aviation, one of the things I've learned in my novice, newbie environment is that when I have the controls, I'm saying to my co-pilot or my instructor, I have the controls. He repeats, you have the controls. And there's that primary and contingent that it's not good enough to be understood. What I've learned from aviation is don't be misunderstood.
That's right.
And if you are, repeat.
And you're probably not going to be misunderstood. I am blessed now to have flown around the world like 30 times now, and flying into countries like Bahrain, where their English is really good, but their accent's really hard to understand. And we emphasize that as a crew concept. So I'm flying the captain who's got like thousands and thousands of hours, and we still have. Did you hear that? Did you hear cleared to land runway 17 left or whatever the runway is? No, that's not what I heard. Or hey, yeah, that is what I heard. Okay, cool. And then I repeated to the controller.
Yeah.
So listening, there's a difference between hearing and listening. Did you hear me or did you listen to me?
White Man Can't Jump. Remember that in the movie?
No, I don't remember that in the
You
movie.
hear Jimi Hendrix. I listen
Oh, interesting.
to Jimi Hendrix.
I remember watching the movie. I don't remember that scene.
Yeah. That was Woody Harrelson. And,
Woody Harrelson. No, great movie.
Yeah.
But no, aviation really focuses on that. And then to tie it back to that employment, that's why we read back every 9 line. We read back, and it's tedious. Oh man, it was so annoying, especially when it was like a 10-digit grid and be like, "Hey, uniform alpha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10," and then he would read it to me, even though I gave it to him, and then I read it to him, even though it. But at the end of the day, you're like, but that's how we make sure the thing goes on the right thing.
Right.
And that's what's important. So
a very sad side of friendly fire is that miscommunication. Like I think of a 75th Ranger, who's people know as a NFL football player, Pat Tillman.
Yeah.
Later, when the debrief and all the investigation came out, it was unfortunate, but the bullet still felt the same.
Oh yeah.
It took his life, and it was a friendly fire just from comms, just from miscommunication. And lessons learned, I think we're going to see in this environment that we've been in since, all the way. We can go back many years. I don't want to try to pick one time because I'm going to offend someone for picking a time. But, people really just need to make sure that they're understood and not misunderstood. And if the focus of that can be, I'm communicating with you because I'm well-meaning for you, that I'm well-meaning, that I want to get to the end of this war as quickly as possible, with an understanding that here's what our takeaways are going to be, here's what yours are going to be. But the overarching environment, I don't want to make this too mushy, but if we can focus on love, there's this mindset that love conquers all. And sometimes you love things in such a way that sometimes things have to get cut off. And in that environment, there was a love for the troops, for your people, and even for the people
residents
of Iraq, the residents, that, hey, this guy's causing hate and discontent for his community. He's a nefarious person. Can we double check that? Can we triple check that? Can we get boots on the ground to make sure that
we did the right thing?
That was the right thing. And that's the kind of environment I think we need to get back to, is going, hey,
well,
can we just confirm and check these things?
it all goes back to listening. We don't listen very well right now.
Yeah.
We just flat out go watch the news. We don't listen.
You know what I love about podcasts?
What's that?
My intent and my focus is on you and these headphones. And it reminds me of being in an aircraft.
It is. You're in your own little world.
Yeah. And the focus is, man, how do I get up and back down? How do I get down as safely as I got up?
Yeah. Because, everyone can take off.
Yeah. I'm pretty good at that. But
Not everyone can land the airplane.
I'm
In a
okay
reusable
with
condition.
that. We're going to finish up with showing us one more cool movie here.
This is probably top 5 moment in my life. This was my first deployment. You're seeing the
that's
HUD
awesome.
video, heads-up display.
Okay.
And it looks like you can hit play. So what you're seeing is a reticule, that circle with the dot.
Yeah.
That's first time I'm shooting rockets. Hit pause right. Meow. Up too late. So what you're seeing is my first time. So I'm in the Philippines, and it was a really interesting day. We fly off the ship. We've got 5-inch rockets, literally from like Korean War. Like
Okay.
we're shooting these rockets that are super old, and we got some guys on the ground. It's a training environment, so nothing crazy going on. We're holding over the clouds, so we're holding at about 5,000 feet, taking our 9-line, reading it all back, which we've talked about. And then if you back the video up, you'll see me actually dive through the clouds to get low. We're doing what's called low close air support.
Okay.
So we're coming in underneath the threat, and so we're running these valleys, and it's just exactly what you would see in
there's
the
the
movies.
clouds.
And it's just green, and there's these huge hills, and literally I remember looking at the cockpit, looking down, and I'm at 300 feet doing about 480 knots, which is 8 miles in a minute. and we're hauling right towards the target, and I'm trying to keep an eye on my lead because I'm a stupid wingman, and I'm like, but I'm so distracted, and I look down, and there's a dude on an ox cart, water buffalo with a sampan. I'm like, this is absolutely insane. And I'm like, okay, I got to focus back on target. So we take the aircraft, we pop over this ridge, we come in, and the target is actually at the base of this hill. And you're seeing a little sun glare there. That brake X means I was pretty close to my lead. That's telling me to get my head out of the HUD and actually fly so you got all this data that's just like hitting your brain. But at the end of it, I'm coming in. I was like, hey, man, and we're about 3,000 feet over the ground. And it looks so slow, but you're doing 400 knots ground speed.
Wow.
I mean, we're trucking. But it looks so slow in the video. That reticule is the rocket reticule. So I don't know why I edited. I'm not very good at editing. But it's flashing.
Know your strengths, man. That's good.
I had 4. This is my second rocket run, but when it's flashing because it's telling me I forgot to arm up the system. So when it goes steady, we had briefed it though that don't arm up until we're in the target area, just in case one decides to let herself
you
go.
might get the old boy on the
as we like to call
Cowan
freedom run.
Yeah.
So now we're coming in, and the whole idea is that we're going to pop up about 20 degrees nose up, hit about 2,000 feet, roll the jet over to about
some G's
4 Gs. And so you see that little comb there on the left-hand side? That's where the friendlies are. Okay. So I know not to point my nose at that. The diamond's the target. And, man, this was a great story. It's the first time I'd shot rockets. It's the first time I'd done low CAS. I'm in a foreign country. On my first deployment. We're working off the ship, which is exactly what I wanted to do as a Marine. I wanted to fly off a ship and land on ships because I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
Not at night, though. It sucks. So here we go. We're in the pop.
Nose up.
Nose up. Pause for about 2 potatoes. And I'm floating it a little bit because I screwed it up because I'm a stupid wingman. I was like, well, that's all right. And then I'm going to stuff the nose over.
Your target's at 7 o'clock there?
Yeah, there it is. So it's right at 10 degrees, right where I want her. And then my goal is to put the dot on the dot. And when the dot hits the dot at the right altitude, you smash the button and make things come off the airplane. And there we go. And that first one did not go where I wanted it. Because I was just, dude, I was so amped up. And so I come off target. So right here, I come off target. And the fact's like, hey, did you not see the target? I said, no, yeah, I saw it. He goes, you missed. And I was like, okay, so what happened was I was supposed to hit like middle of the little hill, but I missed, and it went over the top of the hill and went like another 1,000 yards. Luckily, they're inert rockets. No one got hurt. And he was like, hey, man, you're clear to immediate reattack. So I came back around as fast as I could get the jet, came back, and this time I hit the target. But it was just it was one of those sorties that like I was just so excited to be there. And we shot all 4 rockets. Everything worked great. We bingoed, so we're low on gas. We go back to the ship. We land. And no, we didn't go back to ship. We actually landed at Old Clark Air Base, the old Vietnam Air Base.
Oh, wow.
And so we were moving from ship to shore. We parked the jets there, and the debrief was not good. My lead, who's a great friend of mine now, he highly motivated me to stop sucking at life. And I learned a lot that day, but that was just a great day of just 2 dudes doing the thing, man. It was great.
Seeing that video again, it like put you back in the.
Oh man, I'm just like so amped up. Like I was young. I was like 20. Let's see here. My daughter was already born, so I was like what 26. I was 26 years old, flying a $25 million airplane, shooting rockets, and doing what I trained, doing what I wanted to do since I could walk.
That's crazy because I have a son who will be 26 in May. And just thinking of that dude being in a multi-million dollar, what's a Harrier cost?
25 million is about the rough taxpayer cost.
Yeah, not a bad lottery prize.
I was very blessed.
Wow,
that was great. That watching that video, man, the emotions. I can literally be there right this second.
You land that jet, and you've got 19-year-olds
working on it.
Oh man, which is freaking crazy.
I never really tried to think about that until I became a maintenance officer of VMA 513, Flying Nightmares, one of the best squadrons of all time. I was a maintenance officer for 2 years, and watching those Marines, and it's interesting because in helicopter squadrons and C-130 squadrons, the Marines get to fly with you, so I think there's a vested interest to do the job right. But a fixed-wing, single-seat community is unique in the fact that the enlisted stay behind and the officers go fight.
Yeah.
And the pride and joy of them watching us taxi and take off, and knowing that we could do our jobs because they did their jobs perfectly. I never really appreciated it when I was young, like that video. I knew that they would do their thing, but when I was in charge of them, I really got the appreciation of the professionalism of a 19-year-old. And I don't think you say that very much out in town.
Right.
I had 19 and 21-year-olds, you know, doing 12 on, 12 off, so I could go fly for an hour.
People forget the average age of an infantry Marine is just over 19 years old.
Yeah, the average age for a aviation guy, aviation Marine, is about 20. I mean, we're like
they have a little longer A school.
A little longer A school and a longer contract. So, you know, average age 20, 21. Yeah. But think about it. I got a 21-year-old who's probably focused on other things, you know, out in town. But the pride in which they, and I still talk to a lot of my Marines through Facebook and emails and texts. I always try to make sure that they knew what I would do out in country, so they had an appreciation, so they could live it.
I still love that you have ownership, that you're talking to your Marines, and you're an old retired fart now.
Oh, no, they're always going to be my Marines. And I remind them sometimes when they get a little mouthy, like, hey, you're still my Marine. You will always be my Marine. Every Marine's my Marine. And that's what I love about the Marine Corps. Honestly, no kidding. I meet a Marine out in town, and he's my Marine. If he needs something, he's my Marine. So.
Wow. Cool. Say that again.
We're completely over.
We're way over.
Yeah, Ian has given up on the clock on us. But yeah, I can probably tell you 100 sorties. I could relive every single video that we'll probably watch maybe next time. But I can relive them in my mind.
We will add more, even though we didn't get a chance to talk about them. If you get them to Ian, while you and I are being all sappy about our country and passionate about our country.
And that's what's good.
Yeah,
I love it. I'm telling you, I'm dead serious. I love the passion of some of these young kids.
Yeah,
I just hope they understand the actors that are influencing us.
Right, that's good.
Because this is right out of Lenin's playbook. Yesterday, or what was it, 2 days ago? I forget. Because I try not to pay attention to it. It's right out of Lenin's playbook. We need to be really careful in this country.
And it's pretty scary when people will say, who are citizens of our country, that they are trained Marxists. And that's really scary.
It should scare the moderates.
Yeah.
Because
if that doesn't scare you, think of it this way. I am a trained loyalist to Saddam Hussein. And somebody said that?
I'm a trained loyalist to Osama bin Laden.
Or so, yeah.
Say that out loud.
Right.
And take Osama out and put in Marxist. And then all of a sudden it's okay.
Yeah, right.
I don't. Yeah. Being a student, I need people to understand the history of that government concept, and then you'll realize. And it goes back to my comment. I don't see people running to Venezuela. Don't forget, they're communists.
Yeah.
People don't run to Venezuela. They're not running to Cuba.
You're dropping bombs. And by the way, do you know Mike Tyson was also a fighter pilot?
No.
There's some audio of him talking about one of his bombing missions. Let me let you hear.
You should have paid extra for that button.
Ian.
We're having technical. This is an old man trying to work technology. Oh man, this is comedy in and of itself.
Ian will play it. He'll get it edited in.
He will, because you will beat him later.
Oh my gosh. You know why it's not working?
No, I'm looking at it right now.
All right. I totally botched it. There we go.
It would have happened to any fighter, because at this particular point I was throwing, what can I say, hydrogen bombs. Well,
greatest fighter of all time. You're not going to convince me otherwise.
Now he's going to tell us twice. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
It's going to keep playing.
Oh, boy.
Keep playing. Greatest fighter of all time. Watching him fight. I watched some old clips with my son on the 30 for 30 on Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
There's everybody else and Mike Tyson.
Right.
And that's until someone can unseat him. And did you see him fight the other day as an old man?
I rented the movie. I felt $49 lighter in my pocket.
We do a pay-per-view?
But I have to say, at 51, Mike, you're still the dude. Even as slow as it was, even if
he was, there was some connection there.
Yeah.
I'm not an MMA guy. I just don't like it. It's too blood sporty for me. I like boxing. I like to watch boxing. Yeah. I think it's a gentleman's sport. It's still sport. When a guy hits the ground, you come off.
By the way, I think Snoop Dogg should be a boxing and MMA commentator from here forward. He was he made that fight.
Oh, he's
he
such a
was talking about
personality.
like that was two of my old uncles fighting at the barbecue.
Oh, for sure.
And it was so funny because I went, oh yeah, that's exactly what that's like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I watched
And
clips of that.
Those of us that have families that are
A little high energy.
dysfunctional
A little
and
high
like, yeah,
energy.
we can relate to that.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for being here today.
Thank you
We're
so
gonna
much for
let
having
people-
me. I was looking forward to this all day.
It's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Good luck with the pool too.
Oh, yeah, the hot mess.
Coming over.
Well,
I'll
you got to
wear
come
my,
over and check out the
birthday suit.
porch. I put the lights up and everything now, so and then we can look at the dirt together.
Awesome. And talk about, that reminds you of bombs that you
Did you see the mud mess that the dump truck made all the way out of
yeah.
our neighborhood?
Yeah. Things sometimes have to get dirty before they get beautiful. They have to get ugly before they get
Yeah, without progress,
Yeah.
we'd have nothing.
right.
So, and then
Hey.
watching my wife just make it happen.
Lieutenant Colonel Jacobs.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Retired. Lieutenant.
Yeah, retired.
Yeah.
Retired.
Yeah.
I shaved.
Sideways.
I did shave for you today, though.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to be all cool, and
I can't do it.
I just, now that I've let it grow out to here,
Yeah.
I'm good with it. I think it'll stick for
Yeah,
the rest of my life.
looks good.
Kathleen's not happy about that. Anywho,
All right. Well,
Thank
I'll
you,
see you
sir.
later tonight, I guess.
yeah, let's do it.
All right. Later.
All right, Ian.
Hit stop.
God, we'll keep talking if you don't want to stop.